Zandvoort and Monza 2024, Dick's Race Notes. Number 1. Goodbye Logan, hello Kimi, Franco, and Jack. Not a huge surprise that Williams fired Logan Sargent. Interestingly enough, Oscar Piastri himself made the comment that having been Logan's teammate in the junior formula, he was unsure what happened to Logan, as Oscar is convinced that Logan is quite talented and quick enough to have made it in Formula One. His career was just a bit shorter than that of Mick Schumacher's, and it underlines how tough it is for a rookie to break into F1 unless they are incredibly special talents. Is this a direct result of the testing limitations on teams now? Franco Colapinto joins Williams with a limited amount of F2 experience, but he is apparently highly thought of. James Vowles at Williams feels that promoting Colapinto is a good way of showcasing the talent that is being grown by the Williams Driver Academy. Although Colapinto will obviously not get a race seat for 2024, since we already know that Carlos Sainz is joining Alex Albon at Williams. So this is a way to get the young driver some experience, and it will likely help in the simulator. Franco is the first Argentinian in F1 in over 20 years, the last being Gaston Mazacone. Jack Doohan has gotten the nod to replace Esteban Ocon at Alpine, so this also gives some credibility to the Alpine Driver Academy as well. Finally, to no one's surprise, Kimi Antonelli has been signed to replace Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. He impressed Toto Wolff by setting very quick times in the first and second sectors at Monza, but went so fast that he destroyed his rear tires, such that when he arrived at the Parabolica corner, the rears gave out midway through the corner and he crashed. Wolff commented later that he would rather have a very fast driver who needs to be taught to back off a bit, rather than have a driver who is too slow and try to make him fast. Number 2. The silly season for the driver market is about over. Audi has one seat left to fill. It looks like Bottas will get that seat. Liam Lawson has been promised a seat by Red Bull, so it would appear that either Perez or Ricciardo will get the axe. Hard to say how that deal will go down. Who do you, our listeners, think will get the axe at Red Bull? VCarb. Number 3. Red Bull is certainly not the dominant car anymore. A series of upgrades has not worked, leading Christian Horner to remark that while they may have maybe made some gains in aerodynamic downforce, they may have made the car less drivable, and so now Max is not able to drive the car with confidence and is thus slower to the competition. They are now trying to squeeze probably minimal gains in performance out of the Red Bull, and you have to wonder how much the restrictions in wind tunnel and CFD time from having won the World Constructors Championship and the World Drivers Championship the past few years, and the penalty for going over budget is now impacting them. Max getting soundly beaten at his home race at Zandvoort must have hurt a lot, and with Adrian Newey stepping away from Red Bull, is his lack of presence already impacting the team from a performance and upgrade standpoint? Perhaps. McLaren is a team with arguably the best car and a terrific driver's lineup, but they are still learning how to win. There is talk of Lando Norris being their quote number 1 end quote driver for the rest of the season in order to give him the best possible shot of winning the World Drivers' Championship. Regardless of it being a bit of a long shot, there is still some confusion, at least it looks that way, about what team orders are and how the team is going to enforce them. Ferrari's win at Monza was wonderful for the sport and showed that Ferrari, under Fred Vasseur, is starting to get their strategy calls right. I am so happy for Charles, just wish that Carlos could have been on that podium, but his tires were shot. Number 4. In the midfield, I must say that Alpine has surprised me lately. The diet that they have put their car on has already paid dividends, and they are looking a bit more competitive. Baku is the next race up with that long front straight. You would have to think that both Williams and Haas will be right up there, since their cars seem to be surprisingly quick in a straight line. Number 5. The one-race suspension of Kevin Magnussen is not a surprise. It has been a long time coming, as he has certainly made some questionable moves. The penalty he got in this instance with his coming together with Pierre Gasly is a bit of a head scratcher, because it was a no harm, no foul kind of deal. Makes you wonder if this was really a case of the steward sending a message to the rest of the field to clean things up a bit. Number 6. I'm personally depressed and disappointed with how much Aston Martin sucks. When Fernando says that he would, quote, rather have a new rear wing and a floor than a brain, end quote, you know things must be super frustrating within the Aston Martin camp. Sabrina's race notes. Number 1. Lando, Oscar, and Papaya rules. The team has to look out for itself first and foremost, right? Because teams make money based on the Constructors' Championship, not the Drivers' Championship. So for McLaren, this has to be a delicate balancing act for them right now in the season. McLaren is in an ideal spot with 2 number 1s who can push to the max. The very thing that they've been working for is now in view. That said, it has been a long time since McLaren has been in this position. I know we've said in the past that McLaren hasn't forgotten how to win, but I have have to wonder if they remember how to win. Why? Because a lot of the staff that won in yesteryear is no longer there. There are key staff members of this team who were part of other winning teams, but that's different. This team is building their own institutional memory and story for winning. And if they are like many of us, these individuals are seeking to change things that they may have felt weren't great in the past. So when I see McLaren making decisions, I have to wonder if it's a quote new end quote culture trying to learn from the past while creating their desired future. I see this in their efforts to have two number ones, Lando and Oscar. Strategically, I see the wisdom of this over the past years. Lando and Oscar are young and talented. Why affect either of them mentally by labeling them number two? We've said it before, but they are evenly matched. So if I was Zak Brown, wouldn't I want the longest runway to ensure both of my drivers put in all the effort needed to win the constructors, just as much as I'm asking my team to put it all together to bring me the best car? I think Monza will be the critical juncture for McLaren and Zak Brown's leadership. How he handles these next weeks and races through October will set the trajectory for the team's future. I have to wonder, due to the tracks at Baku and Singapore, if McLaren will be as competitive as they have been so far. My hunch is that Coda and Mexico City will be the moments to tell us if the car is competitive. In the meantime, Zak Brown and Andrea Stella will have to determine how to manage their two drivers, not to mess with either of their heads. Each needs to remain hungry while they don't eat each other up and destroy the team's chances. And as much as each of them are good, I do think they still need each other. For example, Lando seems to struggle for some reason at the start. I say struggle without denigrating him. It's really about comparison to the extremely competitive grid. In Zandvoort, both he and Oscar had issues at the start, but when it came to Monza, Lando benefited from having Oscar in P2. Oscar covered off Russell. Unfortunately for Lando, he wasn't expecting to be fighting his teammate so quickly. As much as that miscalculation must have gutted him, I don't think he wants Oscar to sacrifice for him, and as he said, quote, for things to be handed to him, end quote. I think he expects more of himself and needs to tell himself he can do this and will do this. It really needs to be a lesson learned moment and acknowledgement that right now it stings, but he has the ability to pull out the win for himself, from others, and even Oscar, and to do it cleanly. He is within striking distance of Max, and right now is the moment to put in that mental health work to get him to the top. I believe he can adjust whatever is necessary regarding racecraft. He is an elite athlete. He just needs to believe that he can do this and keep focusing on the things he does right so that the weaknesses start to reduce themselves. And he can do this without alienating Oscar. I do agree with Will Joseph. He needs Oscar. Oscar needs to be hungry and believe he can continue to fight for the podiums in order for one of them to ultimately win. Like two stallions, I believe these two have the ability to make the other stronger. Their personalities and outlooks are so different, but they can sharpen each other. Consider Zandvoort. Oscar was P3, and even there, Oscar was fairly aggressive to hold on to P3 against George Russell. And I believe that Oscar holding off Charles actually enabled Lando to only increase his lead. As much as I believe Lando could somehow pull out a miracle, I don't want to discount Oscar. He has proven to be a fierce competitor, and I can understand why McLaren may be reluctant to squelch a young rising talent like him. As much as I wanted to see Logan succeed, it's hard not to compare Oscar to his contemporaries of Logan and even Nick DeVries. Oscar has skillfully and assertively built his role within the McLaren world. He's cool as a cucumber under pressure. He has a self-deprecating nature that denotes a strong will and confidence. John said it offline, and I have to agree. He's proven he is worthy of a champion-winning car and opportunity. I have to believe that that sentiment resides within Oscar himself, and therefore he's going to fight for every place and overtake. He has a calculating mind that reminds me of many of the old school racers. He has an edge, and I think that edge will only sharpen as the season progresses. And as many commentators have noted, his manager is Mark Webber. Combine that with what I believe is a healthy self-esteem, I don't think Oscar will simply allow himself to be a number two at this point in his McLaren or F1 career. He needs to remain a rising talent in everyone's eyes. I think he knows that he needs to help the team, but as we've already seen by his decision to leave Alpine for McLaren, Oscar and his team are smart about seeing the F1 landscape realistically, calculating many steps ahead. Oscar needs to be seen as part of McLaren's winning story, not simply as a number two who helped Lando win a driver's championship. This helps Oscar as he maps out his career for the day after McLaren, not to mention in the 2026 era if McLaren does not get it right. As to Papaya rules, my thought is that it's the ideal rules for a team. However, ideal and reality are two very different things. And when McLaren comes to the decision that Papaya rules no longer benefit them, they will definitely show us as viewers who the team sees as their best bet for the future. I have to agree with something John said offline to me. Zak isn't in any real difficulty. He has an ideal opportunity to really push the team standings forward as long as he manages manages the driver's expectations in a fair and consistent manner. Number 2, Ferrari in Charles and Carlos. Not much to say for Zandvoort. Carlos really fought for a spot on the starting grid in Zandvoort, and I'm glad that Charles got on that podium. Monza, though. Now, we shouldn't have been too surprised to see Ferrari do well there. Think back to last year's race and how well Ferrari did. That said, Charles and Ferrari took the gamble and it paid off. I watched a video analysis of Charles's drive, and it showed how he was managing his tires, specifically his front left, something I noticed many of the front of the pack drivers complaining about. Don't know why, must be the right-hand turns. If Carlos could have replicated whatever Charles was doing, not to mention had clean air, it would have been something amazing to see how Ferrari could have brought home a 1-2. Unfortunately, by those last laps, it seems like Carlos's tires were done and he was trying to ensure he didn't lose P4. When it comes to strategy, at least since Imola, I haven't been facepalming as much. I have to wonder if the change of race engineer combined with the Monaco win has helped Charles and thereby the morale for the team, not to mention Fred Vasseur's leadership. Ferrari's upgrades so far haven't been consistent in results. The drivers have stated that they and the team don't necessarily understand the car. Do I think any of the upgrades brought to Monza are game changers? TBD for me. I think it's too early to tell, but I think we can be hopeful. I suspect we won't know if the upgrades work until after Singapore. Like Monza, Baku and Singapore are outliers, and I think we need more data to determine if these changes unlocked potential and truly make Ferrari a contender. All that said, I'm glad to see Charles have these wins this year before Lewis's arrival. I don't know how things will shake out, but Charles can at least say that he won these races when looking back on his F1 racing career, not to mention that they happened with Ferrari. And how bittersweet this half of the season must be for Carlos, not to mention this last foreseeable Monza with Ferrari. Heart goes out to him. Number 3, Fred Vasseur and Zak Brown. Monza has me thinking a lot about Fred and Zak. Both are highly competitive and seeking to bring two historic teams back to the front. Each has a lot of pressure, and each seems to have a different leadership style, not to mention a pre-existing culture he has to operate within. I think Monza showed Fred is a classic racer, using instinct and taking a gamble, knowing that he had a 50-50 chance of success, and if he pulled it off, he'd have a lot more institutional and tifosi backing to keeping him in his place to be able to do whatever changes he still wants to implement. I think Monza showed that Zak relies on the people he has compiled around himself, and that he's worked hard to create an environment for racing and competition to be at the forefront. He pushes his team hard and wants his team to give everything, and that instills trust. He's put a lot into the relationship bank with his team. I hope that moving forward, he's able to make the withdrawals and has overdraft protection, because ultimately his goal, as with any team principal, is to have his team win. He's got some tough calls, but that's part of racing. Based on what I've seen, I think he'll wait until the absolute last minute to get the most amount of data to make his best judgment call. Number 4, Mercedes. George had a P4 start in Zandvoort and P2 start in Monza. Those qualies are good, but unfortunately it's not translating to the race. I can't imagine how frustrating that must be for him, especially now with Kimi on the horizon. Lewis really fought in Zandvoort to get up there with Russell. He also did many fastest laps over the course of the race, though Norris got it in the end. Considering his starting spot, I wonder what data came back to Mercedes that can help them unlock their car. Number 5, Red Bull, Max, and Checo. Everyone has given Checo a really hard time when it comes to his performance, and I'm not making any excuses. I just have to wonder if the car earlier in the year and before Red Bull continued to push for further development was truly optimized for Max, hence the reason Checo has struggled to match Max. They have different driving styles, but I don't think anyone is saying they are the same caliber. Checo is good, but Max is great. Whatever's happened to the car, it's now hard for Checo and Max. That's got to worry Red Bull, because no one questions Max's ability to drive. Max is continuing to pull out performances, but it's not easy, and clearly his confidence in the car is down. Couple that with all the driver substitution discussion. What does Red Bull as a team gain by putting someone else in Checo's seat? At least with Checo, they get consistent data and the money and sponsorship he brings ahead of the North American races. If the data they can get helps them for this season or next, in light of their limited wind tunnel time, it's got to be a major positive in Checo's column. They need the inherent consistency of two drivers who've been wrestling with the car. They have to be hoping that Max continues to pull out all the stops, and his thirst for the championship keeps them as a team at the top of the leaderboard. I have to wonder if the major time difference between Max and Lando in Zandvoort was intentional on Max's part. Him sending a message to the team, and/or he knew his car wouldn't allow him to challenge Lando, so he therefore pushed just enough to get the P2 but not sacrifice the DNF. Not to mention it was his home race. He wanted to be on that podium.